English ground for continents. I imagine it as a guru in all chains and declaration. Even Guru Ratna.
Good morning. Good morning. Yesterday, did we do the Heart Sutra? Oh. I think it would be nice.
And there was a great community now, and a great community of us. At the time, Babylonians for words, Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, of the Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Sariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage trained who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sarvatiputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, additional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object, touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Share. Therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to the unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Ayata Om Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha. Kucha, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shairavati Putra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were in joy and highly practiced that spoken by the Bhagavan.
Thank you, Brian. So here in the Four Immeasurable Thoughts, this is semi-shiur. So there's like 4 rounds for each of these immeasurable practice. And I think this is derived from the Lamrim practice, right? So this is more in the context of Lamrim, or I think with some influence from tantric practice as well. Generally, when we just practice the 4 immeasurables, we have only the aspiring section, right? The aspiring part. May all sentient beings be free from suffering. May all sentient beings have happiness. May all sentient beings not not part away from the state of happiness, and may all sentient beings be free from attachment and aversion, right? So just these 4 parts. Anyhow, yesterday, we had a good interaction. I was thinking to perhaps begin our morning session with something like continuation from our questions. If you have any questions or if you would like to share something, shall we do that? The mic, please.
Thank you very much for the meditation you led on the grand scheme of things, the visualization or the explanation of reality as one way of viewing our universes. It was so expansive. The idea of infinity is so central to Buddhist practice. And I wanted to question the concept of infinity in time and space and beings and planets and karma and how critical it is to incorporate in the sense that, we're insignificant on the level of a grain of sand, but nevertheless, we're connected to the infinity and as such have infinite potential. Even though we're insignificant, we have, it is because of the infinity that we have an enormous infinite impact. Is that a correct understanding of?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
And central to the practice.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. You are absolutely right. I think. Yes. 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 And as you said, it is helpful, at least to my mind, to think of infinity this way, right? For example, in the context of when I find myself and my self-importance rising, then infinity helps me stay grounded. And when it seems a little discouraging, my afflictions, my laziness, then also infinity is helpful, right? And when it seems that there is no solution to a certain issue, or it seems that there's really no hope, no solution, no answer, then thinking of infinity, how the mind has no starting point and also no end point, that helps. And that and I think seeing that the mind is clear, that it is luminous, right? This luminous clarity, that this is the mind, and all the other dualistic thoughts, conceptual thoughts, afflictions, those are just secondary characteristics. They're just layers, right? And this mind, the mind itself, it's always present, spontaneous, inborn, and eternal in a sense. Eternal in a sense, right? But at the same time, it is not permanent, it is impermanent, it is changing, ever changing. And it is the base of everything else, and the basis of my samsara, the basis of my nirvana. So infinity here helps to be grounded and not get lost in all these concepts, in all these dualistic thoughts, right? All this high and low, up and down, this and that, I and others, all of that, all this dualism. So to accept and see that the mind is infinite is so helpful. So thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Jackie.
Good morning, Rinpoche.
Morning.
I wanted to ask you if you have any ideas about detaching from the world and from relationships where there's a close connection and like family, but not fulfilling. Was it not fulfilling in a sense of our work to be focused on other things. Does that make sense?
Yes. Detachment there's no one way of defining what that is, right? I think there detachment on so many levels, on different dimensions, right? Detachment. detachment and attachment, even though they are related in one way or another to an object, at the end, I think it comes down to the subjective experience, right? So attachment, detachment, being attached to an experience and then detaching oneself from that experience, from that feeling, from that emotion, right? So our family, friends, loved ones, it is important to have a relationship, at least from our side. By relationship, I don't mean like a relationship between two friends, but how we relate to them, right? How we relate to them. At least from our side, I think that relationship is something that we can control, or we can have any kind of relationship from our side. However, in whatever way we would like, right? How we relate to our family, our friends, and others. This part, I think, is very important. Why I say this relationship as opposed to relationship between two people is that with two people, there are like two shareholders kind of thing, right? Whereas from this point, then one is the sole, you have ownership of that relationship, right? And it doesn't matter what the other person thinks. Of course it matters, but not to the point where you can actually change it, or you know what I mean, right? You know. So from our side, you know, as a practitioner, you know, as a practitioner, then how to relate, right? How to relate. I think this is important, right? How to relate. Relationships. Something like the middle way, you know. I think in our minds, to not hold too tightly, become over reliant. This could be problematic. And then also not over distancing to the point of abandoning. I think this is also not ideal, but it should be somewhere in between, right? Between these 2 extremes. I think this is very important. very important. And in our relationships, sometimes I find myself a little selfish. So it is again important. I have to remind myself of what is it that I can do for the other, right? What can I offer? And again, it is important to know how much one can offer. And this is very important. Many times in our relationships, sometimes I feel that we really offer too much, and then in a way, something like spoil the other person, So through dialogue, through something like having a mutual understanding, right? I think this is very important. Very important. It is important, just as it is important from my side to have a relationship, a productive relationship as equals, relationship as a human being, a fellow human being, just as that is so important, so is how the other person sees the relationship in this way is equally important, right? And to let the other person know of that, I think it is very important. If there's going to be a harmonious relationship. In short, I think as a human, as a person, seeing yourself in this way, right? As a person, without all these other aspects of something like labels, unnecessary labels, right? Right? I think this is very important. Being on the same ground, being on the same ground, I think that is really the point. Just being grounded, yeah, being grounded, and then approaching others from that, from that. And the more we can do this, I think, then it becomes clear. It will be clearer, right? Formulation of I and all these other layers that we associate with I, many of those formulations, I feel, they get in the way of just being grounded, right? So this is something to think about once in a while. Once in a while, I think we can ponder, right, on these aspects, on these aspects. And yeah. But just like I said yesterday, it's very clear that I'm using the questions and then that would start like a train of thought. So it's clear that when after the question, whatever I say, it's not really answering the question, but I'm just like going and taking, and then I just use that to sort of give me a little push, right? So thank you.
Rinpoche, we have 4 questions on Zoom.
Uh-huh.
And Rachel, did you have a question? Okay. You ready? The first one is this. And it's part of your flow from where you just left off. Yesterday, you mentioned we need to develop a healthy sense of self. Can you talk a little bit more about what that actually means?
It's quite similar to what we were talking just a few minutes earlier. A healthy sense of self. Again, I think we have 2 extreme sides, right? So if it is too low, a sense of self, if it is too low, then of course a sense of low self-esteem and self-blame, those will there's a risk of that, right? And if the sense of self is too high, then I think like arrogance and not being able to relate and not being able to see the viewpoint of others and understand their feelings and so forth, there's a risk of that happening. So again, somewhere in the middle of that, I think would be, yeah, a healthy sense of self. No matter what, one cannot convince oneself that there is no such thing as a self. No matter what. Even in the teachings, if they say there is no self, there is a sense of self. We can't deny that. So to look at oneself as an individual despite some deficiencies, but also having many wonderful qualities. And that too shared with all others in our community, shared with all around the planet. Seeing ourselves in such a way, I think is somewhat helpful, right? In some contexts, of course. In some contexts. And I think the sharing part is so important. How these qualities, all these wonderful qualities that I have, I'm not the only one who has those qualities, but I share these qualities with you all, with you all. So I think sharing is so important, right? And seeing that all the wonderful qualities that you have, others also have, right? I think like this.
Thank you, Rinpoche. This question asks, I would appreciate it if you would explain how the teachings of the perfection of wisdom states, quote, no mind, is consistent with the teachings that the mind continues from lifetime to lifetime. Thank you.
From the Paramita Sutras, this section, such as stating no mind, of course, what that means is that there is no mind according to our perception. There is no mind that exists as per our perception, right? So there is no truly existing mind. This is the meaning, right? With these two words here, form is empty, emptiness is form. Form is empty, right? Form doesn't truly exist. Truly, in the sense that self-existing, existing from its own side, not by way of dependent upon others. That is the meaning, right? Form is empty, and emptiness is form. I think one way of understanding that, interpreting that, is because of emptiness, therefore form exists, right? Because of emptiness, therefore form exists. So that is the meaning of those no's, right? Of the no in the Panchaparamita teachings. And then the mind. So I think like that, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rinpoche. The next question, on the basis of the four immeasurables, we do prayers and pujas for those who are suffering or passed away and dedicate this positive action and energy towards their benefit to somehow help with their suffering. How do these prayers, pujas, and dedications directly affect those beings?
Power of prayers. I think we talked about this, right? It must be through karma, right? I think through karma. The fact that we are gathered here today, I think is due to karma. How we have met each other is due to karma. How I was born is due to karma. And what each of us does what each of us we do, whether in a physical form or verbal or mental form, affects the other. Yeah. What we do here right now, that would affect someone in India, right? Because of interconnectedness, dependent origination. We are all connected that way. We are all connected that way. So, if I think positively of you, that affects you. And if you think positively of me, that affects me somehow. And when we send positive thoughts to others, that affects them. And taking into account this endless mind and infinity, then definitely every aspiration we make leaves a print, leaves a footprint and leaves an effect. So like that.
Thank you, Rinpoche. I think that'll cover our Zoom folks for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And now, Rachel.
Thank you, Rinpoche. I was thinking yesterday when we were talking about compassion and needing to contemplate suffering along those lines, and also talking about Buddha nature in the same conversation. And I think when I contemplate the third level of suffering, the all-pervasive compounded suffering, sometimes it's almost easy to have that feel like that is our nature, that suffering. So I was wondering if you could just discuss that most subtle level of suffering and give me some thoughts to chew on.
Yes, you're right. Since beginningless time, always in the state of dukkha, always in the state of dukkha since beginningless time. Yet, Buddha nature is untainted, not tainted by afflictions, right? Buddha nature is never tainted by mental afflictions. What is Buddha nature? Buddha nature is the emptiness of the mind. Buddha nature is the emptiness of the unenlightened mind. The Buddha nature has never been tainted by afflictive emotions, by avidya. And Buddha nature is the nature of our mind, our ultimate nature, our mind's ultimate nature. Buddha nature is what makes enlightenment possible. If our mind was not devoid of true existence, then there is no possibility of enlightenment, right? And because it is devoid of such existence, therefore, it is possible to be free from samsara. So Buddha nature is the ultimate rationale for our enlightenment. This aspect, the dukkha aspect, when we go into Tantra, I don't know, we will not go there. But on the more common practice, in regard to your question, the causes of dukkha, the mental afflictions, they are conceptual thoughts, and they are adventitious, obscurations, and what they perceive does not accord with the true nature of our minds. And therefore, they are adventitious and not the nature of our minds, because they can be parted away from the minds, right? Ultimately, they can be separated from our minds. They are something like add-ons, not an essential part of our minds, I think. What was the term? Lubricituma, adventitious, and then what was the other word? Was it stains or adventitious stains? Was it stains or impure
Event,
something?
maybe, or
Excuse me?
event, maybe.
Uh-huh. Oh,
not like a thing, but requires
Oh, maybe
more momentary.
the mic, please.
Adventitious, maybe not things so much in this context, but maybe like an event or something that's happening spontaneously. It's arising, right? At the moment. Not that things aren't, but in another way. Yeah. And so that can be changed, stopped, or prevented, or make an end run around something where you're not stuck with that thing
Yes. Thank
or
you.
non-thing.
Also in the non-tantric, in the root text by Pandin Choda, Dharma Kirti, Sim ki rangshin yue se wa, tima tam chu lubu. Sim ki rangshin yue se de tima nam lubu wa. The nature of the mind is Veselva, is clear light, right? So that also mentions, yeah, also in the non-tantric text. So our mind's ultimate nature is clear light. Therefore, these afflictive emotions are adventitious. This state, the state of dukkha, this is our current state, but it is not our ultimate nature. Yeah, it is not our ultimate nature. It is the state that we are currently in, but it is not our ultimate nature. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question along those lines of yesterday you were talking about the innate qualities of compassion and love and these qualities as if they were a thing and like permanent and like something that it's like if the nature of the mind is clear light, then these qualities as well would be something that's innate as well. It's like why it seems like the only reason that these qualities are part of the mind is that when we have compassion, we feel good and we want to feel good. And so then therefore we want to have states of mind that cause us to feel good because that's what we like. But where do these qualities like compassion and love come from if the mind is just kind of a dependent arising?
These qualities of the mind they come from the mind and from past karma and past karma and past karma, right? The thing is, there is no singular cause. Singular cause? I think this would be very difficult. Would be very difficult in the context of emptiness, right? A singular cause, a singular condition, that would be very difficult in the context of emptiness within the premises of emptiness, right? What I was explaining yesterday, I was explaining in very loose terms. Loose terms? I was really being liberal in my expressions. But you know why I you know why I said it like that? The way of expression, it has to do with the context, with the purpose, right? If I said everything technically correct, I think I would find it a little boring. Sometimes, now that I've finished my formal studies and no more like in the debate courtyard, then I really like to, it's like freedom, you know? I can just say anything that comes from the top of my head, you know? But of course, you're right. You're right.
And it sounded really good.
Yes, it does.
So I don't want to degenerate statements.
Yes, you're right. But then not everything that sounds good may not necessarily be good, right? Yeah. So I think, yeah, I think how you receive it, you know, how you receive it, I think that's really the point, right? Somehow this idea that the positive qualities that we have to explain, to see that as innate, and then the other, like the side effects of those qualities, as seeing them as not innate. At least at one level, it's I think relatable, you know. But ultimately, you're right. Ultimately, it's very difficult to say where these practices go without the wisdom. Very difficult. No, hopefully it's going in the right direction, right? Hopefully. Hopefully. The most important thing when I go into the technical side, then I find I'm now really narrowing it down. You know, I find myself really narrowing it down to a point, to a specific goal with a specific mindset. And that, I think, at a personal level, that is very good. No? That is very good to the person, whoever is practicing, taking account of all these different aspects of the practice, right? A holistic way of practicing. Very good. On the other hand, I think I had this discussion with a friend. What is Dharma? No? What is Dharma? What is Dharma? We always use this word Dharma, Dharma, Dharma this, Dharma that, you know? But what is Dharma, right? What is Dharma? Before we go into all these technical things, using all these very specific terms, sometimes confusing terms, it is important to get down to the basics, to go to the basic. And the basics are very clear, right? Our ethics, our focus, and our worldview. I think these three are very important. The ethics, and then concentration, right? Focus, not become distracted. And then our view, worldview. These three, very important. Ethics is based on ahimsa, right? Not harming. And ahimsa is based on, of course, compassion. So, being compassionate, and then remaining steadfast, not losing the way, not losing the path, and staying true to the path, right? And then the view, the wisdom of looking at oneself in relation to others. So these three, they're like our basic dharma, These are the basic dharma. All Buddhist practices, I think, come down to these three, right? compassion ethics is really about compassion. And then based on compassion, then our path is based on that. A compassion-based way of living, right? Compassion-based way of living. And not getting distracted, not veering off that path for concentration. And then based on compassion, then to develop a view that helps, that strengthens compassion. So to integrate this view with compassion, right? So these three are very important. Yes. And what was the question? I'm sorry. Sorry.
What is the meaning of dharma when we talk about worldly dharmas? What is the use of that form of dharma?
Yes. So dharma can also mean phenomena. I think was it Vasubandhu? In Vasubandhu's Namshi Rigpa. I don't know how to say this. I don't know the Sanskrit title nor the English title. Namshi Rigpa. Anyhow, it is one of his 8 prakarana. Prakarana, Vasubandhu, he has a collection of 8 prakarana, yeah, prakarana, and it is the last one. And in the title, there is Namshe. The Namshe is like maybe a commentary or sayings or something like that, right? Maybe elegant sayings, Namshe Ripa, or something like that. I think isn't that what Tenzin Dorji used? Slogans. Oh.
I can say it again. So I think that one of those was the slogans that we're supposed to live by, the guidances that he laid out.
All right. And this is
I remember Geshe Gelsen talking about that.
all right.
Yeah.
Yes. Like how this term dharma can mean 10 different things, right?
Right. Yes. That was.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so these are like principles-based guidances, I think.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Principle-based guidances. Thank you. By Vasubandhu, Acharya Vasubandhu. Yeah. So in that, Vasubandhu states that dharma can mean 10 in 10 different contexts, right? And one of those contexts would be phenomena. And this is, I think, what the 8 worldly dharmas So something like the eight worldly phenomena. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
It doesn't look like we have any more questions, so we can proceed accordingly.
Hmm?
Oh, right.
Thank you, Rinpoche. I always try to simplify things. And when we were talking about suffering and talking about loving kindness, is it, let's see, if I can love unconditionally, could that relieve my suffering?
If one could not love unconditionally, could that?
If I could love unconditionally,
Could, okay.
would that relieve my suffering?
Mhm. I'm thinking about as you ask this question, on my mind, to love someone unconditionally, yes, definitely. Loving unconditionally will relieve one's suffering. Definitely. Now to go from there, loving anybody, having compassion for anybody, as we talked yesterday, Jean, would you like to add something? Maybe the mic. I think I would really like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I was thinking that usually it is said you need wisdom to become free from suffering. That loving is only, or compassion, bodhicitta, is only half the path and doesn't have the power to bring us to liberation, which is the state of being free from suffering. And that requires the development of wisdom, the understanding and realization of emptiness, some degree realization. But then if you had the capacity to actually love unconditionally, that would assume you have somehow gotten to a state of very deep wisdom, very broad wisdom, great understanding of who you are and who others are. And I'm sure there are ways to get there without going through the Buddhist path. So it's a great attainment, and it's a very high attainment to have unconditional love, no sense of self. No sense of self in that way, like your needs and wishes are not more important than the other person's. So that's big. Yeah. What do you think?
And Tenzin, please, your thoughts.
I think what Jean said was very well stated and really covered everything. And what you're saying also, I was also thinking about what there's a praise to Nagarjuna, where he was saying, I've been going over this phrase a lot, where he says beings are exhausted by the proliferation of perceptions from perceiving, and that we keep fixating on different phenomena, and that until we have this understanding of emptiness, we will continue to fixate on things that can cause us suffering, because all those 8 worldly concerns do arise of attachment, aversion, grasping, and all of these things too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, I think to love unconditionally, yes, relieves suffering. Yes. So I think that was the question, right? Yes. Yes. And it is, of course, not so easy, to love someone unconditionally. But when you do that, then of course you can relieve suffering. Definitely. Definitely. And Jean and Tenzin, could you help me? Unconditionally, could you elaborate on that? Like loving unconditionally, compassionate unconditionally, yeah? So could you elaborate on an unconditional part?
I think it would be a situation where no matter what the other person is manifesting in terms of their body, speech, and mind, toward you or toward others, you never give up your love or compassion for that person or persons, whatever the case may be. No conditions can move you off that, out of your state of mind.
Rinpoche, yesterday you were saying, because so much of it is about practice and really stretching our heart and mind to really accept difference, and difference on so many levels. And yesterday you were suggesting that we consider others and situations from a third person view. And I've just been ruminating on that a lot. And I find that quite potent and powerful, because I'm always going from my view and to really think of what's a third person view of a situation when you're really looking at person's actions or decisions, that can really help just drop this sense of I've got the right view, or how we instantly grasp on our perception being correct. So what you said yesterday, I found very helpful, for this practice of really developing unconditional acceptance.
Thank you. Oh, please.
Would unconditionality be a form of wisdom?
you want to go first this time? I think so. I would say yes.
Uh,
Rinpoche, if you're ready for another question. And another Bob has a question, so we have two Bob questions. Excuse me.
Viva the moon. Yeah, the thing, Tenzin, about the other person's view, and always thinking of the other person's view, I find a lot of times when I'm in that position, I have completely misread the other person's view. And until I could actually speak with them and have some kind of a meaningful dialogue, then I'm living some sort of illusion. Illusion.
Do you have a response, Tenzin, or did you want to? No? Are we okay? Thank you, Bob one. Are you ready for the last question, or unless there's something else to be said? Rinpoche?
Oh, Steve, you mentioned like it's this unconditional. Did you say unconditionality? Like, so you said a form of wisdom, right? So you are not like going into emptiness, right? Could be that. But it could also not be that too, right? Okay. Wisdom. So a person who loves the other person unconditionally maybe I could ask a person, okay, a person who loves the other person unconditionally, and unconditionally is no matter what you do, no matter how you react, I will always love you, have compassion for you. I will never give up on that. I will never give up on you. Now, where is the wisdom in that?
Well, I think if it's one other person, that can't be wisdom. This has to be a mind that's available to all other people. It's like this has to be like a state of mind.
Were you talking of unconditional love for a person, or like for in general? Oh, that was your okay. Everything. So for one person, wisdom is not necessary, right?
It might, yeah, you might do that out of a non-wisdom mind.
Yes.
Out of attachment or
how
your
about,
own need or something.
How about for all sentient beings, unconditional love? To do that from a non-wisdom, is that possible?
I'm not sure, but like I was saying, if you actually had that experience and you weren't a Buddhist, that would mean you'd have some attainment of some sort from some source.
But having unconditional love and compassion for all sentient beings does not call for the wisdom on shunyata, right?
Again, that's why I'm holding out that possibility. But according to my training, that's not possible. Because as you were saying before, you need this experience of the immensity, the infinity, in order to go to such a, to develop such a big mind that's wide open, or a big heart that's wide open like that. I don't know how you would get there without understanding kind of the basics of Buddhism, but maybe it's possible.
So how about conventional bodhicitta, does one need to first gain the view on emptiness before cultivating or generating the conventional bodhicitta?
I don't think so, because it's part of the path in a sense. You know, you have that feeling that you want to do that.
Right.
You know, I think that's enough for a bodhicitta to arise.
Then, but still, the view on emptiness is a prerequisite for unconditional love. Is it not?
The actual, yeah, I guess the actual experience. I think in Buddhism it is.
Outside Buddhism,
I don't know. No, I mean, we say that, but we, as you say, we may not have all the, we might not have have the
so in
best view.
Buddhism, do you mean a person who is on the Buddhist path, or do you mean from the Buddhist viewpoint? There's a difference there, right?
Okay.
There's a difference there, right?
Right.
So in Buddhism, do you mean a person who is about to go on the Buddhist path, or from the Buddhist viewpoint?
Yes. I think if a person is on the Buddhist path, then they would probably be compelled to follow the Buddhist presentation of that path and study emptiness, meditate on emptiness, and have a realization of emptiness. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to go further, I would think, unless you got off the path and took some other way.
Then would you say that renunciation, according to Buddhist, like a Buddhist renunciation, let us say, does that need to be preceded by a view on emptiness, shunyata?
Oh, no. Well, there are levels, right, Rinpoche? I mean, you have some understanding of renunciation, and then as you go deeper into the path, your understanding of renunciation also deepens. And
Of course.
So,
but that's not my question.
okay.
The question was, in order to have this renunciation, does one first need to have a view on emptiness? Is it necessary or not?
It can't be necessary, because renunciation comes first, doesn't it? I mean, that's sort of the beginning of the path. Right?
And then the correct view on emptiness is not necessary for bodhicitta.
No, it's not, because that comes.
So then the question
next.
is, but isn't it necessary for unconditional love?
Well, yes. I mean, if you're, yes, the later development of it.
So what comes first, bodhicitta or unconditional love?
Well, I think, again, you can have the
debate.
You can have the aspiration and the wish, and be very sincere about it, to become a Buddha for the benefit of beings without having a realization of emptiness, without having a genuine realization of emptiness.
Yeah, lower.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
please.
yes, I was saying that I think that we can have a genuine aspiration to change the world, change everyone, bring them to Buddhahood, without actually having the capacity that comes with realization of emptiness.
Yes, that I agree. Yes.
I'm going to give the microphone's attention now.
Well, I think this is where the path comes in, because we all enter the path, from different directions and interests. And sometimes it is the the Lamrim path, we're learning, the graduated levels and deepening understanding of both what compassion is all about and emptiness. So, when we first start, we have a rudimentary understanding of any of that. And so it just builds and deepens. So, I think as you progress, your journey continues. As far as essential part of emptiness for understanding or having unconditional love, I think that too is growing. It grows. Is that better?
Yes. Yeah, this is very
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it grows.
Ah,
It grows. Like His Holiness was saying, he met that monk who was just meditating on love. It was just love. And there's that part of just the expanding and growing acceptance and love of others. But all wonderful faith traditions have an ethical standard as well. We have ethics to follow in order to really help clear our own mind of our misperceptions as well, so that we can generate a sense of non-harm and opening our hearts to others.
yes.
Steve, did you want to add?
Ah,
Would you like to add?
Well,
Okay.
my sense of the connection between the principles, renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness is as we understand one, we understand the others better. And they're all connected. And your development in each one grows by depending on the other one.
yes, 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 yes. So I agree with you all. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for sharing. Yes.
Bob, Glenn.
Thank you, Tenzin, for mentioning all the other faiths, because I believe that you can find unconditional love through Islam, Judaism, just a man in the jungle all by himself, a woman walking with no path whatsoever can be capable of developing unconditional love. We don't have the patent on that.
Yeah.
So back to unconditional love. And you have unconditional love for all beings without first somehow developing unconditional love for one being, and then for each additional being. Because as soon as you say, I love you unconditionally in spite of, then it's no longer unconditionally. I love this baby unconditionally in spite of being awakened 3 times tonight. And as long as there is one person who triggers that in spite of, can you truly say you have unconditional love?
I agree. Yeah, you're right. Yes, I think cultivating unconditional love for all sentient beings, before one must begin with one person, right? Cultivating unconditional love and compassion for one person, and then gradually then including more in that love. Yes, yes, yeah. And you're right. In conditional love, there is no in spite of.
It seems like the more we talk about this, to me, it seems like unconditional love is pretty reckless.
It's pretty
Reckless.
reckless.
Might not even be beneficial to anyone. Because you'll just let them do whatever they want. And you're just like, oh, it doesn't matter, I still love you.
Well, I'm gonna get my exercise. Okay. We'll make it.
Oh. Particularly from the last comment about unconditional love. Steve and I were married by the Gannon Sherpa years ago, 37 years ago. He didn't tell us to have unconditional love. He told us to not find fault. That was,
Not to throw the furniture.
Yeah, that was the secondary one, but this just, you brought this to mind. Yeah, he didn't say to have unconditional love for each other. He said not to find fault, which is entirely different because it's finding fault if someone leaves their socks on the floor, but it's also finding fault if you want something different or you want the other person to be different, act different, then you're doing fault finding instead of just accepting that person as they are. So that brought that to mind. And our anniversary is coming up.
The anniversary. So. No. Who wants it now? All right.
Just in response to the recklessness of unconditional love, that doesn't take out the fact that you're going to have some real compassion for the karma that someone might be creating for themselves. You can still love them as a being, but there's also a side that you have to see. They may be doing something that's going to cause themselves some deep problems in the future, and there's nothing your love can do to change that. Your wisdom possibly, but a lot of times people won't accept our wisdom. It's not right.
Rachel? All right. In response, I've been taught by a very kind guru about not supporting malevolent behavior. I think that's part of what we're talking about here.
This is such a rich conversation. But the recklessness, what strikes me is confusing for people is mistaking love for enabling or unhealthy behavior. And so in these aspirations where may people have happiness and the causes of happiness, well, if that's love, well, the causes of happiness are ethics. So if I'm loving someone unconditionally, I'm promoting virtue. And so that will have boundaries about unvirtuous behavior. And it will be responding to people from my side in the healthiest way that would promote ethics. In that way, it's not, unhealthy, right? Things that look like love are actually sometimes promoting non-virtue. And then to have compassion for all the causes, of suffering being non-virtue. So if I'm responding out of compassion, can I respond to people in ways that eliminate non-virtue? Again, sometimes boundaries and behaviors. So in this discussion, I was reflecting that I think human beings, without any view of shunyata, emptiness, can understand true causes of suffering true causes of happiness, and they can see it's in many other religions, that I don't want people to suffer, and I want people to be happy. And without any view of emptiness, can recognize this is how it works even in samsara. And have an unconditional view that everyone I come in contact with, I would like to respond as best possible. I'm human and selfish. As best I can in a way that's healthy, that would promote virtue and help avoid non-virtue. And I think that that capacity, without a view of shunyata, is with humans and their nature, if they understand that the self-grasping or the greed or the violence is actually creating suffering. And I think I've met a few people who are not Buddhist at all that have that kind of heart. It may not be totally unconditional, but I think it's on a path where we can, if we don't confuse love and compassion with enabling, an unhealthy behavior. And for me, that makes it just a very practical way of knowing what causes our suffering and what causes our happiness. And for me, that just helps me. I think of my love being just trying to be healthy with the person here, wherever they're at. And sometimes that's not to have them in my life. Sometimes it is, but what is the healthiest in that way?
Thank you.
Question. Awesome, yeah. Anyone else? If not, Rinpoche, is there anything else you'd like to say on this subject?
Oh, no. You have shared so much and so valuable. So valuable. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have a word for unconditional love in Tibetan, or is that not a concept the same way it is in the West?
I think we use the word like great compassion, great love, right? Inji Chenpo, Chamba Chenpo. Teme is immeasurable. Yeah, immeasurable. Yes. But this term like unconditional love or with conditions, this I have not come across such terms.
I have one comment up on the Zoom. Is it okay if I share this comment that's related to this conversation? Unconditional love and compassion toward oneself needs to be part of the mix of love and compassion toward all sentient beings, no exceptions. No fault finding toward self as well as others. That's a comment. Would you like to?
Thank you. Thank you.
I was just wondering, do you think the Buddha had unconditional love?
I would like to think so. Yes. Yes. Sometimes we see these terrible things happening on the news, people committing such atrocities, Yet their mother has so much love, so much compassion. Now this is unconditional compassion, right? Unconditional love. So to have this level of compassion even for a neutral person, I think this must be this immeasurable love, the great love, right? To develop this, having this kind of love for a neutral person, I think then you're already at this level, right? You're already at that level. Even developing unconditional love for one person, and I don't mean it like as a mother, but knowing a person over a number of years, and then developing that love into unconditional love. Even doing that, I think, calls for much training and much dedication, right? Much dedication. If I am able to develop unconditional love for a person who I've known for a number of years, even that is such an achievement, or that's a very high practice, very high level. Let alone, we don't need to talk about countless sentient beings, but even one person developing that love, which was at first conditional, then into unconditional love. Using just one person as the basis of developing love and compassion, right? Even that, I think, calls for much dedication. So, in this way, then these three trainings are indispensable to each other, right? Do not see these three trainings as separate components, but rather they are indispensable parts of a single practice. For each practice, we have to apply these three trainings, right? For any practice, even developing unconditional love for just one person, even that, I think, requires integrating these three trainings. The three trainings of ethics, right? And then concentration and wisdom. Yes. So I was using those three in very broad terms, not being too technical, right? Not using like these words, what is it? Shamatha and Vipassana, right? But it calls for, okay, it may not be shamatha, but we have to use the basis of shamatha. We all have that. And that is the point. We have to use the base of shamatha and the base of wisdom and the base of this higher ethics, which we all have, right? Which we talked about yesterday. Naturally, we have love and compassion. We have this ability to concentrate, to be focused. And we have the ability to develop our view. So these three, even for one single practice, integrating these three, bringing these three to a single point, to a single practice, I think is so valuable. It really completes your practice. It makes your practice complete. All what you have shared is so true. It comes from your practice, from your heart, from the Dharma, from your dedication. But this is really so valuable. I cannot speak for everyone in the room, but for me personally, it's so valuable, right? And I think I can speak for everyone.
Tenzin, did you want to say something?
So thank you. And you all have a good lunch